Most empty drops are not a mixing problem and not an arrangement problem. They are a sound selection problem. Hey guys, my name is Max Blücher. I've been a melodic house producer for the past couple of years, and today I'm going to show you exactly how you can make super rich drops with just a few simple techniques. Before I show you some examples from my own tracks, I'm going to talk a bit about the theory behind drops and why it's so important that you pay attention to this. Most drops feel empty because there's not enough contrast between either the break, the pre-drop, or because the low end is too weak. And by that I simply mean your sound selection is not quite on point. Because without a strong low end, no drop will ever sound full and powerful. So the easiest way of making a drop feel full is not by adding more layers, but by creating contrast with the previous section of the track. Now whether this is the intro or the break, the easiest way you can do it is by creating a very light break, not overloading it, also the intro, not overloading it, and then really looking for a very deep bass line, a nice kick to make the drop feel very solid. Now you might ask yourself, okay, how do I find the right kick and the right bass line? Well, the easiest way to finding this is not through some random samples, and it's also not through some random presets. So something I would love for you to try out is by actually creating 5 different bass lines that sound super rich and full in the low end. Now there's a preset I love to use from PML. I got lucky and I found it. It's called Sub 2. It's from Diva. And what this preset allows me to do, if I combine this with a plugin Kick 2 and I take the Nicky R preset under Progressive House, I already have a very solid and big kick I can start with. And this kick translates onto every single club system, will always sound good in almost every single track, and you can refine this kick now to create different types of kicks for different types of tracks without losing the power of the low end. Because the problem is with most samples, they might sound super full in the mids and in the highs, but in the low end, it doesn't translate that well. And I wish at the beginning of my music journey, I would have just taken that extra hour and created a couple of kicks that would have saved me so many hours down the line. So here we have the Kick 2 plugin from Sonic Academy. And for example here, this preset sample has been created by a good friend of mine. His name is Ben or Banati. This is how it sounds like. It sounds super full and super big already. It has a nice low end, it's very nice and short, so it doesn't collide too much with the bass line, and it does the job by adding a little bit of click here for the high end. If I remove this, this is the original kick sound. So this automatically creates a super big kick that translates onto every single club system. So this kick is absolutely amazing. Now we can experiment around here and we can technically increase the length of the kick. Now it already sounds a lot more boomy, and we can use this for bouncy bass lines, right? So now we're already going towards an 808. And there we have it, we have an 808. But the whole point is try to create different lengths. You can even go even shorter for some really minimalistic type of house. And try to really take a day off and try to really only focus on different types of kicks. And the next day you review the presets you created, you delete the ones you don't like, you refine the ones you really love, and you already have 10 or 20 kicks that you can use in every single production. So nowadays I don't even think about it. I immediately, for a kick, I go to these 5 different presets and I choose one of the 5. I don't search hours for a different kick, I just use one of those presets. And now let's dive into the bass. So once I have the kick, the one bass line I use in every single production is a bass line from Diva. It's called BTD Vision BS Sub 2, and it sounds like this. And it's basically just a sustained bass line, and it's super simple. Like, the reason I love this is it's not only a sine wave focused bass, it has a little bit of like a saw waveform here. And what I love about this is it bleeds a bit into the low mids, through that it's a bigger bass line, and you don't only have it isolated in the low end, you already have it kind of blending into the mids, and now you can layer this bass line with other bass lines and it will always sound great. So I always use this as the standard bass line if I want to use a sustained bass, and then on top of that I can build the other bass lines. but this is the root structure. It's always the same and it will always sound super full. And now that kick together with this bass line will always sound super full. You don't need 10 elements. You need something very simple and a simple process you can follow over and over again. One of the biggest mistakes is trying to make the drop the main focus of the track, so putting way too many ideas into the drop, and you might have the same problems right now. So the drop is not the place to show the people everything you can do. The whole track is. So you can also use the break, try to really carve out space in the drop for the main element. And here's my golden rule before we get into the demos. You can either have a rhythmic bass line and a more like sustained lead section, or you have a rhythmic lead section but a more sustained bass line, but you never have both. You never have like a rhythmic lead section and a rhythmic bass line, because those two elements will always compete with each other. So imagine listening to a track and has super rhythmic bass line and a super rhythmic lead section. The audience will become super confused. Same with the drums. Like, you always want it to be clean and minimalistic. You never want to overwhelm the audience with 1,000 ideas, 1,000 lead elements, 1,000 different bass line, bounciness, and listen to your favorite tracks and really identify. He's only using one sustained lead element and maybe a bouncy bass line, but not overwhelming the track with a bouncy lead and a bouncy bass line. Now, if the rhythm of those two are coherent with each other, then you can make an exception of having both a bouncy lead element and a bouncy bass line. But most of the time, you want to always have a little bit of contrast here. But the most important part, guys, it always has to feel good. That's the most important part. Don't make too much logical sense of what I'm saying here. Always trust your instinct and always trust the way it feels. That's the most important part. Never mathematically correct, always emotionally correct. So let's get into these examples. First track is my track Amber, and I'm going to low pass it on the master here, so you can see how the drop sounds like. And now let's focus what I did here in terms of the low end. So as you can hear, it's just a sustained bass line and a kick. And you can already start to hear the piano in the rhythm. It was like I think it was just an 8th rhythm or dotted 8th. Then always the vocals, also adding some rhythm. But the rhythm only happens here in the mids to high end. There's not a lot of rhythm going on in the bass, except the toms that add a little bit of rhythm once in a while to the bass line, which is very important, by the way. Not a lot of rhythm going on here. Only in the low end. If you have a sustained bass line, it's extremely important that you also introduce some toms to give the bass line some rhythm and try to keep the lead section nice and rhythmic. Now the second track here, it's called Before I Let Go. Let's have a quick listen to this one. Again, bass line is very stable. A bit different here is and again, the exact same situation here, sustained bass line with rhythmic toms. Also in the second drop, it's the exact same drop. Bass, piano, main lead, and some shakers to give it rhythm. So that's all you really need. Now for this track, this was more of like a clubby track. I performed at a few different venues. This one had a 8th bass line. So it was dum 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 dum. It was an arpeggiated bass line bit with like a rhythmic drive to it. And here I have like a melody playing dum 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 dum, and that's the only rhythm I'm adding to the dotted eighth bass line. But the dotted eighth bass line is just on one note the entire time, which is why it's no problem for the other melodies to play around the bass line, because the bass line is sustained. If the bass line move around, you know, with a different melody, like go to the third or the fifth of the chord, then it would become a little bit more harder to play around it. But since it's sustained, it builds tension, and the most amount of action is actually being created here in the main melody part, in the mids. So again, playing through the same note, and then just a piano chord creating the melody. And then of course some drums. But that's basically it. So it's super, super simple. Now one more example. This never happened. Bass with a kick. This one is more low mid focused, the bass line. So here the bass line bleeds a lot more into the track. Then one lead element, some drums, and slowly an art being introduced. And that's it. And yeah, so once again, sustained bass line, some toms for variation, a little bit bleeding into the low mids, and having a strong lead section and a full and round kick. So without any of that, there would be no contrast. And then always what I love to do before the drops, keep it really light and open. And then, you know, conquering it with a strong low end. Now, this track wasn't mixed down fully yet and was also not mastered, as you can tell from the waveform. This track was also not mixed down fully yet and also not fully mastered yet. These two were more polished, which is why they sound a bit more full, but that's basically it. So if your drops feel flat, not full, fix the contrast, fix the low end, and simplify the idea, and you will have a super strong low end in no time. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and have a beautiful day. Take care, and make sure to check out maxluchamusic.com for one-to-one music lessons. Alright guys, have a great day. Take care. Bye bye.